Can settle down so that this childless catman can talk about books. Please don't show your bottom. Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon and today I am back with not again the aforementioned and previously promised video where Mum and I do our James parallel read for the Booker Prize shortlist. That video will be going live on Thursday, and also Mum has very kindly delayed her Stoneyard devotional. Well, she's had no choice really because I haven't got around to rereading that. I'm partway through right now, and so those two final Booker Prize shortlist parallel reads will be going live soon. So today instead you have got a book haul, so some of the books that I was sent from publishers and some that I was gifted and some that I bought, well, all the books that I bought myself in October last month. As always, I'm going to start with, well, in this case, the one book that I have shared on the channel before, but it was in proof form, and that is Margaret Atwood's Paper Boat, which is new and selected poems from 1961 to 2023, and what a big chunkster of a collection this is. I think I have read some Margaret Atwood poems before in some of her sort of collected works, but never sat down and properly read one of her poetry collections. I think I might have a couple of them on my poetry shelves, which I can see over there, which is why I'm looking at them and not you, which is slightly rude. Apologies. I'm really intrigued with this. This is one that I want to dip in and out of. Sometimes I will sort of binge a poetry collection. I'm trying to get better at spacing that out because I have noticed when I do that, sometimes the whole collection fades. Or actually no, sometimes the visceral parts of it really remain, or big themes really remain. Anyway, this is too big for all that shenanigans, and what I want to do is kind of go through them, and I think if they're done in order of when they have been published, maybe just sort of read them in those chunks, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'll report back in due course. Then on two books that I haven't mentioned before from publishers, and the first of those is one of my most anticipated books for 2025. That's Murder at Girl's Nest by Jess Kidd, who I absolutely love the writing of. I've enjoyed all of her previous novels, and yeah, this is the first in a crime series, Nora Breen Investigates, which yeah, I'm super duper excited for. I don't know very much about it at all. I know nothing about it, frankly, apart from the fact it says, in a house like Girl's Nest, curiosity might prove fatal. I don't want to know too much about this because for those of you who've been around a while, this will be no surprise. I really like to go into books in general without knowing too much, but even more so when it's an author that I love and I just want to get lost in whatever story they've got to tell. But I'm so excited that Jess has turned to crime, as it were. Also, I need to show you the bookmark that it came with. I mean, that is a brilliant bookmark, and it's out in March. Then a book that is out in February and I'm really keen to get to as well is Han Kang's We Do Not Part. So this is Han Kang's latest novel. It is translated by E. Yewan and Paige Ania Morris, and I really loved The Vegetarian, and I've really liked, is it The White Book? I haven't read Human Acts, which has just come out in the most stunning new edition. In fact, they have reissued a lot of her books and they all look so beautiful. It's kind of given me the urge to collect them, even though I already have them. And anyway, moving on from all of that, I don't know much about this at all either. It's just Han Kang's latest book, and recently she won, now I want to say it's the Pulitzer, but was it the Nobel? And I should know because I meant to have my finger on the book pulse, and quite often, frankly, I don't. Can't quite decide when is the perfect time to start talking about 2025 books, because I have read quite a few recently as I was hosting the Faber 2025 showcase. I've read 4 books for 2025 already, and I'm like, oh, is it too early to talk about them? How early do you want to get them? Because pre-orders really matter. Anyway, on to more 2025 books. We have Sunstruck Next by Will Hunter. Now, again, this is a book that I don't know very much about at all, and oh, it also comes with a very nice bookmark. I became aware of this author through Emma Healy, who has a new book coming out next year called Sweat. She's the author of Elizabeth is Missing, which is one of my fave books. I'd seen she'd done a showcase, and Will Hunter was one of the authors that she, or sorry, it says on the side Will Hunter, and then on the front William Rayfet Hunter, so I don't know if calling him Will Hunter is possibly being a little bit over familiar. His Instagram was just so, I don't know, does that ever happen to you where you'll see some, like an author's Instagram and you're like, I just want to read you because I just think I'd really, really like you, and so therefore I'd really like your work? Does that make me sound like a stalker? I'm slightly worried it does. Anyway, all I know about this is that it starts off in a big old house in France where our narrator is going to visit his best friend from college and her siblings, and it's giving slight Saltburn vibes, which is possibly a lazy comparison, but for me it was one of the reasons that I was really, really like doubly drawn to it after the small amount of Insta stalking that I had done with William Rayfet Hunter / Will Hunter. So yeah, this is out in May, and I'm very, very keen to get to that one very, very soon. Now, I feel a little bit naughty getting this next book because I haven't read this author's debut, and I have meant to for ages, so I'm feeling like this should maybe be, or their debut should maybe be one of the books that I get to before the end of this year, and then I can head to Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinan. I don't know anything about this at all. There's lots of excitement for this from all the people who read, and seemingly all the people who read and absolutely blinking loved Bellies. So yeah, like this cover. At first I thought it was like an apple, or it was like a glacier cherry on a pin. It's a balloon being pinned. I don't know what that means in relation to the book, but it's kind of got a slight, it gives a real candy cover but also a slight bit of menace. I don't know if you see that or whether that's just me. So then we have another book where I was asked if I'd like copies, and I said yes please, because I've talked about this before on the channel. There are certain authors where I end up collecting a lot of their books because I think they're going to be like my favourite kind of author, and Heather Parry is one such author. This is Carrion Crow, and this is all about a young woman who is, I think she's kind of locked, and she's confined, locked away, confined, and it's all because her mother says she should be, and she trusts her mother. But instantly, that as a blurb implies that maybe she shouldn't. And when I say it's a blurb, it's like a couple of lines here. That to me is the perfect blurb. I do not want to know too much before I go in. I don't want a blurb that basically tells me what happens up to about page 250 of a 350 page book. No, 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 no. That's not for me. Very, very intrigued for this. This is out in February too. It sounds creepy. And I like the fact there are some creepy proofs for next year that I can read during spooky season, because I do get excited in the lead up to Halloween, but it's definitely Halloween that unlocks me wanting to head to a lot more creepy stuff. Then this next book came unsolicited, but instantly I wanted to read it because on the back, Monique Ropey says, one of the Caribbean's finest writers. This is A House for Miss Pauline. It's out in February. It's by Diana Macaulay. And I want to read loads more Caribbean literature, because when I do, invariably it becomes like, well, they become some of my favourite books of the entire year. And if Monique Ropey, who Passion Tide, I mean, wow, I love The Mermaid of Black Conch, but Passion Tide this year, just amazing. But if she says that this is written by one of the Caribbean's finest writers, I got to get to it, so I will be. Don't know anything about it. It's going to be an exciting journey to find out more. I do know a little bit about this next book, which is These Violent Delights by Misha Nemereva, and I was very kindly sent a copy of this by Jack, whose channel I will link to. I won't link Deleu, I'll link below, and he got this off my wish list ages ago, and I have a wish list, but my wish list is only for books that I can't get in an independent bookshop or indeed a high street bookshop in the UK. Anyway, this wasn't available a few years ago when it came out, and yes, this is going to be one of those books where I really, really wanted to read it. It was on my wish list, it arrived in hardback. It's been out in paperback in other countries and is finally out. I think this is going to be in hardback here. Doesn't actually say, it might be out in paperback. I still haven't read it, basically, is the short version of that story. I believe it's queer, and it has friendship that becomes really obsessive and then gets a bit out of control and leads to quite a shocking act. The title kind of gives that away a little, but yeah, I'm really intrigued for this one and really want to get to it, and now I can, because I can batter my proof about, and it means I'm going to keep my hardback all lovely. Then we have the latest in the Faber Editions series, where Faber are republishing books that have gone out of print however many decades ago, and now they're bringing them back for time in the spotlight because they deserve it. They've kind of gone under the radar, and this is William Saroyan's Daring Young Man on the Flying Trapeze and Other Stories. Now, again, don't know what this is about, but what I do want to do, and I was talking about this when I did a sorting my book trolley out video for Patreon, I have said for ages I want to do a video where I read all of the Faber editions. I've been saying that since there were only like 3, and now I think there's like 12. So what I might do, well no, what I'm keen to do next year is a series of videos where I read the whole selection, or it might be just that I read the whole selection as I go through 2025, but maybe then do a wrap up at some point, because I'm sure there'll be more to come as well, so I'll have to keep on catching up as we go. I really like the fact that books that have kind of not been forgotten, that seems a little bit harsh, but and you know, Persephone have been doing this for donkey's years, but I do like there being like resurgence for books. I think that's really nice. Just like I think it's really nice when an author has like a, you know, bestseller, but they've been writing for ages, and then you've got like the back catalogue and that starts to get celebrated. I'm really hoping Charlotte Wood wins the Booker. I possibly shouldn't say that when me and Mum haven't done our ranking video yet, but because then I'm hoping like all her backlist will get published here in the UK. I mean, I've got quite a lot of them on my import shelves, but still. Anyway, that was a very long tangent after just talking about that. Then we have a book that has, I think, the perfect blurb in terms of length and the intrigue that it gives within it. This is Nephis by Rachel Louise Driscoll, and on the front it says Sister, Rival, Protector. That's intrigued me. And then on the back it says a young Victorian Egyptologist, a family riven by tragedy, one chance to atone the sins of the past. That's like a perfect blurb. I think that's great. Really got me intrigued, and so yeah, I'm excited for this. It's out in February. Then another book that's out, in fact the next 2 are out next year, and then we have one that's currently out and you can actually get your mitts on. And ultimately, from books that are coming out next year, we have Stag Dance by Tori Peters. The final cover doesn't look like this, it looks like this, and I think it is absolutely stunning. I mean, this hot pink has been everywhere in publishing and book covers in 2024, and I feel like it is going to go into 2025. I'm going to read a tiny bit of the blurb of this because like I want to read this anyway because I really love Detransition Baby, but this really intrigued me. It says, Detransition Baby thrilled readers with its sharp contemporary vision of family, gender and romance. Now, Women's Prize nominated author Tori Peters returns with a boldly inventive quartet exploring transness past, present and future, and I think that sounds incredible. So this is one that I'm very keen to read, and if I didn't say earlier, I feel like I did, but this is out in March. And then the last of the books that are out next year, but the penultimate book from publishers that I'm going to tell you about that I got last month, is The Queen of Fives by Alex Hay, and I really loved Alex's debut, The Housekeepers. It is a heist novel that has like the feels of Downton Abbey in the fact that it's very upstairs, downstairs, and there's just lots of shenanigans going on. This has a great tempting sort of, that's not a blurb is it, but you know what I mean, teaser on the front, where it says, in Victorian high society, London's most talented conwoman has 5 days to win the game of her life. I don't need to know anymore. Very excited for this. Victorian era is my favourite historical era. Last but certainly not least from publishers is a poetry collection. This is Mingle by Caleb Parkin, and I nearly bought his debut today. I saw it in Queer Lit, which I didn't know was, is Europe's biggest queer bookshop, and it's in Manchester. It's queer poetry, and as a general rule, I have really struggled with poetry for quite a long time, but it's been queer poetry that's really drawn me in. I don't know if that's because as a fellow queer person, there's just something that, I don't know, clicks that didn't click when I did that, that clicks with me or chimes with me in a particular way. I can't make a chiming noise. Don't try and make me. I won't do it. Very, very, very intrigued for this and want to read more poetry going forward. Then I got a delightful package of books which are for a very exciting event this weekend. That is the inaugural Women's Prize Book Club, the official Women's Prize Book Club, which me and my mum are going to be hosting. And it's starting this month and then we'll carry on through 2025 to celebrate 30 years of the Women's Prize. We're so excited, we can't believe it. You can join us online, and I have found out that if you get an online ticket, you can watch it afterwards. You don't have to watch it literally as live. But also, if you want to come and watch it literally live, you can come to Story House on Sunday, which is also Women's Prize Day, where there's going to be writing classes, there's going to be other panels, discoveries, and then the inaugural Women's Prize Book Club later on in the evening. Just so excited. Our first guest is Susanna Clark, and so we got sent Pyronesi, which is Susanna Clark's Women's Prize winning book. Also, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It's the 20th anniversary of this. I read this way back. I was going to say 20 years ago, but actually I think it was 19 because it was when the paperback came out. And then The Wood at Midwinter, which is a novella which is set in the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and is out to mark 20 years since it first came out. This is such a beautiful book, like the illustrations and stuff inside. I mean, the end papers, amazing. So yeah, so we'll be talking about Susanna's books, plus she has picked a book from the Women's Prize Library, which contains hundreds and hundreds of books from longlisted, shortlisted and winning Women's Prize authors. And the book that she's picked for us to talk about is The Goldfinch. Yes, it's definitely a chunky reading, what's the word, celebration. A chunky reads celebration, that's better. Although I am chunky and I have been reading, so therefore we could talk about chunky reading, but let's not, let's move on. I will admit, I tried to read this when it first came out and I just wasn't quite into it. I'm a big fan of The Secret History, which interestingly, I don't think she'd mind me telling you this, my mother is not. I think Mum's really enjoyed this. I am just about to start it. I know, I'm cutting it fine, but I've been hosting a lot of author events recently, so yeah, but looking forward to it actually. And I think now, because there's distance from it and all the kind of hype of it, I'm wondering if that's going to be quite a different reading experience from what I sort of had when I started it back all those years ago. I can't remember what year it was that was on the long list, possibly even the short list. Anyway, there we have those. So on to books that I bought myself, and first up I treated myself to a selection of books from readings in Australia, and the main reason for that was there is a new Robbiano. This is Dusk. This has only, well, very recently come out in Australia. It is all about a puma that is killing shepherds called Dusk, and we then meet, I think they're twins, who are kind of young adults who are living on the poverty line, and there's this abbot, kind of, if you can capture Dusk, you can get a reward, and so they go to try and do that. I think this is going to be absolutely incredible. I've only heard amazing things. People have been so lovely as well, because they've said how great it is without telling me a single thing about it, and I cannot thank those of you who've done that enough, because I think that's a very, very generous thing to do. I'm going to be reading this very soon once I've finished all of my work reading, which is hopefully going to be the end of this week for the rest of the year. I'm going to be reading by whim, and this is definitely going to be high up on sort of top of my TBR, although I don't like to use the term TBR. We've talked about that before. I don't know if it's coming out in the UK. I don't know when it's coming out in the UK. I didn't care about any of that. I was like, I just have to get that book and I have to read it this year. And so I ordered this, plus some other treats, including Emily Maguire's Rapture, which I have to say I don't know very much about, and it's coming out in the UK next year, but this cover is just phenomenal. And the reason I picked this up was because Charlotte Wood has been raving about it, along with some lovely Bookstagram friends that I have in Australia who thought it's absolutely fabulous. And I also saw that Fiona McFarlane has a quote on the bag saying, "This glorious novel both burns and sings." And I really like Fiona's writing, so that to me is a good sign. I also picked up the Degenerates by Raden Richardson, and this is meant to be a very Melbourne book, but I have been told by all of my friends in Australia that I would be a very Melbourne person. I hope that's a compliment. I'm not sure. I mean, I hope it is because they're my friends. But anyway, I also saw this talked about on the Slaggy Book Club recently, and yeah, that intrigued me all the more. But I've just seen rave reviews of this as well from Australia, so really keen for that. And then, penultimately, but the last of the books, the Australian books that I bought from readings in Australia, is The End and Everything Before It by Finnegan Crookmeyer. And I can't remember how I found out about this. It was definitely on Instagram, but then, very much like I was saying about William, sorry, I went and saw his Instagram and thought, he seems really lovely and interesting, and I feel like his books would be too. And then I think through Instagram I also looked and saw some reviews, or no, I think it's since I've shared this somewhere. Where have I shared this? But people have said the ending, there's some, oh I know, I did a reel on books, I know, Down with the Kids, I did a reel on books that I've got from Australia, these ones, and people were saying that like the ending really gets you, again, very kindly without spoiling it for me in any way, which was lovely of them. So yeah, very intrigued for this one. And then I also got a Canadian book, and this is The Adult by Bronwyn Fisher. This is a queer Canadian novel, and I've been wanting to get my mitts on it again since I saw this on Instagram a while back, and I want to read a lot more Canadian fiction, and it was easier for me to get a copy of this from Australia than to get it directly from Canada. So I did, it's here, and I am mildly obsessed with this cover. So there's those. Now, all of the rest of the books bar one are books from independent bookshops, so I will tell you about each of the bookshops as I go through these books. Actually no, that's not true, one was directly from the publisher. No, let's do this one first. This book I bought through Waterstones because they were the booksellers at the festival where I interviewed this author about another of their works, and this is Babel or Babble by R.F. Kuang, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Rebecca about Yellowface at Durham Book Festival, and in the lead up to that, this was on my periphery more and more, and we talked about it backstage and on stage, and I just got more and more into the idea of it, and so I bought it and got her to very kindly sign it for me. This feels like the perfect sort of January into February read, something big and something I can really sort of, I don't know, I feel like I'm about to have a big chunkster phase thanks to Susanna Clark and both her books, and the fact that she's picked The Goldfinch for me and Mum to read and talk about. So yeah, we got that one. Then another chunkster, but one that I did already have a copy of, however, and the publisher have taken note of this, the font in it was so tiny, but it sounded like such a me book. It's basically a queer Victorian tale, like, I don't know, that feels like it should have Savage Catnip stamped on it. It's Nettle Bag by Nat Reeve, and they have now republished it with bigger font. So, very excited for this, and another one that I really, really, really want to take. I mean, the font is still kind of small, but it is definitely bigger than it was before. But yeah, really, really looking forward to heading to this, and then I would like to read Early Fate, which is, I think, the follow-on novel. Are they a series? I'm not sure. If you've read them, tell me down below. But we have that. Then on to books that I bought in independent bookshops. The first of which was, now, is it called Conversations? Is it called Collaboration? What? Collective? Oh no, and I don't know where the bookmark is. It's in my copy of James, which is over there. I'll have written it somewhere there. It's an independent bookshop in Durham, which I went into and absolutely fell in love with. They also do coffee and stuff, so if you ever happen to be in Durham or travelling through, or, you know, I mean, if you live in Durham, you probably know about it. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. And I got two books in there. I got Reservoir Bitches by Dalia Della Cerda, and this is translated by Heather Cleary and Julia Sanchez. Told you that Hot Pink has been hot this year in publishing. These are interlinked short stories about incredible women, often sort of fighting against the odds or going against the grain in Mexico. Really, really, really excited for this. This gave me sort of, This Is Not Miami by Fernanda Melchor. I really, really loved when I read that, I think towards the end of last year. And that was these short, I mean, she didn't describe them as short stories, they were more like, she described them as short narratives, because some of them were like, she'd listened to conversations people had, or people told her stories set around Mexico, and this was giving that vibe, so I thought, right, I'm going to give that one a whirl. I also picked up Love Marriage by B.B. Ganeshananthan, and this, I already had a copy of the, I got a second-hand copy of the original edition of it. However, that cover I just think is so stunning, and I got even more excited because I hadn't realised when I bought the other copy previously that it's quite vignette-y, and I really like that, although not many paragraphs sometimes, which always makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm really, really keen to read this. I can't quite decide whether I read this year or whether I wait until next year, because Brotherless Night, which was BV's Women's Prize winner and also me and Mum's favourite and the one we predicted to win from the shortlist, is one of my fave books of this year, and I'm only allowing myself in my favourite reads of the year like one book per author, and so yeah, this is one that like I think like maybe I should read this towards the start of next year. Yeah, I've decided that. Now, this next book I think is possibly also going to be one of my favourite books of the year. However, I also have a rule that I'm not allowed to have a favourite that's in a series unless it's the first in a series, because like I've talked about before with book prizes, I just think, I don't know, there's something about a book 2, 3, 4, however many down the line in the series that like, I don't know, I just feel like they shouldn't be put for prizes and so shouldn't be put for my favourites. Don't know whether it is, it just is. Anyway, this is the fourth and final of the Joubert Family Chronicles, The Map of Bones by Kate Moss, and this I ordered on Independent Bookshop Day from Harris and Harris, which is one of my favourite independent bookshops, because this is the signed independent edition, and get ready for the spreads. I mean, they are absolutely stunning, so a huge thanks to Kate of Harris and Harris. I mean, a huge thanks to Kate Moss for writing this. I know to thank her already because I know I'm going to blink a little bit, although I sort of don't want this series to end, but at the same time, a 2025 reading plan that I do have is to head to Labyrinth and that series and read all of that next year. I'm working out whether maybe I do a read along or something. If you'd be interested, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, I'm so excited for this one. But yeah, I do have that rule about books that are however many in not being allowed to be my favourites, but I feel like this will be a favourite, so I'm in a conundrum already, and one that is just of my own creating. Then I went to Bristol for work, and so many people had told me, so many of you lovely lot, sorry, and also people, to be fair, on Bookstagram and elsewhere, that I needed to go to Storysmith because it's an incredible indie bookshop, and lots of you thought I would love it, and lots of you were right. And I picked up 2 books there, one which I'm definitely going to be reading for non-fiction November, even though I forgot to include it in my non-fiction November TBR video, or Pile of Periphery pile? That sounds wrong. Pile of Periphery, yeah, that's why I called it, because I don't like the term TBR. Anyway, I think I've talked about it already in this video again. Repeating myself, moving on. But yeah, Recognising the Stranger on Palestine and Narrative by Isabella Hammad. I thought Isabella's novel Enter Ghost was incredible when I read it earlier this year, and wanted to read more of her work. This is a short non-fiction pocket book of power, I feel like it's going to be, so I'm very keen to get to this one. Then I asked, and I never do this normally, I felt like I was being really brave, but I went and asked the staff there what books they'd recommend, and they gave me a few options, but the one that was the winner for me, although this cover I can't quite be dealing with, but I think it's been chosen for a reason. This is Cesaria by Hannah Nordenhock, translated by Saskia Vogel, and that is quite the cover. The way this was described to me though was a Victorian Gothic, and I was like, oh, pretty much don't need to say anything else. I did get more of a recommendation than that, but that's kind of where my ears had been hooked and the bookish part of my brain had gone, okay, that's the one. This is from Helios Press, who I don't think I've read any books from. I need to double, triple check that, but I don't think I have, so I'm excited to try a new publisher too, but blimey, I think this is, yeah, some quite dark shenanigans go on in this book from what I've gathered. And then the last 2 books I picked up in the Haunted Bookshop, which is a new bookshop in Bristol, and the first of those is Celia Fremlin's Don't Go to Sleep in the Dark, which are short which is a collection of ghostly, supernatural horror short stories, and I'm really keen to read these very, very soon. I was planning on reading these on Halloween, however, I ended up watching a horror movie instead. So, yeah, really, really keen for these. And Celia Fremlin seems to be having a big renaissance. I think I've seen 2 or 3 of her books, or I think I've got 2 of them on my shelves. One is like a summer holiday murder mystery that's been brought back after not being published for years. And then there's a Christmas one as well, which maybe I shall read in the lead up to Christmas. So head to this, then head to that. Not necessarily back to back, but anyway, yeah, excited for this one. The final book that I'm going to tell you about, because it's the final book that I bought in October. The author of this is the reason I ended up in the bookshop, because they'd gone there, raved about it, and as I was headed there, I think a week or so later, I was like, right, I have to go there. And that author was AJ West, and this is The Betrayal of Thomas True, which is a queer historical novel. I don't know if it's got spooky shenanigans in it or not. I know that AJ's previous novel did, and I need to read that as well, actually. I was like, right, because if it hadn't been for AJ, I wouldn't have known about the Haunted Bookshop, so I need to buy it because of that. But I didn't know when I got there that it would be the beautiful sprayed-edged edition, and also that it is signed, and inside it says, "Rip your stitches, bitches." So, yeah, what a way to end this haul on. I think that's a delight. So there we go. Those are the books, well, all the books that I bought in October or last month, and some of the lovely books I was gifted from the lovely folk at the Women's Prize, and some of the books that I was sent from publishers. I don't share all the books that I get from publishers. I'm planning on doing a series of videos over on Patreon where I try a chapter from the Piles of Possibility, and those are books that have come unsolicited, but I think maybe I'll like, we'll see. I'm planning on starting to do those from later on this month. So if you're interested in that or any other additional savage shenanigans, then my Patreon's linked down below, along with my Instagram, my artist formerly known as Twitter, although I'm determined to leave there at some point, and my wishlist and other things. I hope you're all doing super duper well. I hope you're reading something fabulous. If you've read any of these books and you love them, feel free to let me know that in the comments down below, without any spoilers though, obviously. But also, if you didn't love them, don't tell me that right now, because I'm super duper excited for all of these books. Let's have a chat about that once I've read them, whenever that may be in future reading wrap-ups, because then I think it's fair game. But for right now, I'm super duper excited about them, and I want it to stay that way. As I said, I hope you're all doing super duper well. I hope you're all reading something lovely, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Well, it'll be the parallel read of James by Percival Everett from, oh, why have I made that so long? It'll be the next in me and Mum's parallel reads of the Booker Prize shortlist, where we'll have read James by Percival Everett. I will see you all then. Bye.